Kirsten Lambert, and this is my audience. You may take your seats. According to UNICEF and the World Bank, 767 million people worldwide live in extreme poverty. That's living with less than $1.90 per day. And of those, 328 million are children. Every single day, 1,000 children under the age of 5 die from illnesses such as dysentery and cholera caused by contaminated water and inadequate sanitation. And 17.8 million children worldwide are orphans, having lost both of their parents. Within these impoverished communities, children face the risk of violence, abandonment, and disease, ultimately leaving them stranded on the streets and in orphanages. However, there are things that each and every one of us can do to reduce and resolve these prominent issues. And I got to experience this issue firsthand. In my senior year of high school, I was given the opportunity to travel to Jamaica for a mission trip. From the time we landed on the island and boarded our bus, my face was glued to the window, soaking in the country's beauty, not wanting to miss a thing. As our journey continued deeper into the village, I was confronted with some unanticipated images. Instead of the oceanfront cabanas and resorts that I had expected, I found homes missing walls and roofs, stray dogs wandering the streets, and children walking barefoot along the rugged roads. My first impression of the beautiful Jamaica was altered at this time. Now, before I get into a little more factual information, I want to take you to the situation that I faced where I knew there was a problem and something had to be done. It was on the 6th day of my trip that I made this realization. Our group leader had warned us ahead of time that although the rest of the trip would be physically demanding, we'd be mentally drained after this day. He always told us it was going to be the hardest, best day of the trip. West Haven Orphanage was not a typical orphanage. This was an orphanage for severely physically and mentally disabled children up through young adults. Our bus ride to West Haven was different than our usual bus rides. Instead of laughing and singing to our new favorite reggae songs, there was a stillness and an unusual quietness on the bus, and we were nervous and unsure of what to expect. My heart was immediately heavy as I set foot off the bus at West Haven. The orphanage was separated into different buildings, which were dependent upon the individual's conditions. And the first building I walked into was lined with cribs. The room was dim with little pockets of sunlight peeking through the windows. And as I walked towards the first bed, I was immediately overwhelmed, and my eyes flooded with tears. I had expected the cribs to be filled with infants, but instead found dozens of bedridden orphans. I was unsure of how to interact with these children, but wanted to do anything and everything I could to love on them. While I was feeding a little boy diagnosed with cerebral palsy, one of the orphanage workers came in to tell me that a nurse would be arriving shortly to see him as he was on his deathbed. A lump formed in my throat as I looked at this little boy, struggling to hold back the tears. So many thoughts swarmed my brain at that moment. This boy, along with the others in the room, were nearly helpless. They could not walk, they could not talk, they could not feed themselves. They were not only abandoned by their parents, but now completely alone and isolated in this room. This was only one child out of the millions of children worldwide who are orphans, who have been abandoned by their parents, lacking the love, care, and support from a family. But why is this the case? What is causing this issue? My experience in Jamaica helped me to realize how extreme of an issue this is. And while I focus specifically on the country of Jamaica, I want you to realize that this problem does not stop here. It is happening across the globe. HIV and AIDS is a prevalent issue that affects Jamaican children and communities on a day-to-day basis. In just the Caribbean region, 600,000 people are said to be currently living with the disease. And in a majority of these cases, the disease is transmitted from the mother to the child. Approximately 20,000 children are infected by the disease, and of those, 5,000 are orphans. Children with HIV and AIDS are more often than not excluded and marginalized from society, explaining why the percentage of orphans with the disease is so high. It is often the children who will feel the greatest impact of this disease. Their parents, older siblings, teachers, and even their peers become infected by the disease, and death becomes a common occurrence in their communities. This also commonly leads to children being left without parents and alone on the streets and in orphanages. Violence is another major issue that is harming the children of Jamaica. Whether it's male on male, youth on youth, or poor on poor, homicidal violence is a main social issue, and 77% is by gun. Due to the high levels of poverty and the fact that children spend a lot of time on the streets, many young boys resort to joining gangs, resulting in high levels of violence among the youth. The prevalence of violence in the Jamaican communities, especially among the poor, is outstanding. In just a 10-month period, 20 infants between the ages of 0 to 19 were treated in emergency rooms every day for intentional violence-related injuries. That's 20 children every day, with cases that included over 19,000 cases of sexual assault, stab wounds, gunshots, and blunt force injury. The severity of violence in all that occurs on the streets, at school, and even at home has become a norm for children. Witnessing this on a daily basis, they become numb to the harsh behaviors, even adapting it themselves. Much of this devastating information leads to the fact that children in Jamaica are devalued to the point of not even being viewed as humans. 10% of births are not even registered before the child turns 1. Children within Jamaican culture are invisible to society, and basic human rights do not even seem to apply to them. Instead, they're left to the streets to fend for themselves, searching for their own work, often begging in order to survive. Some children are forced to head their households and care for their younger siblings when they're left without the parental support. The children of Jamaica are in trouble, and more proactive approaches need to be taken in order to protect the children of the future. Now, even though we don't see these things occurring before our eyes on a daily basis, they're still happening, and we must still take action. While there are organizations working directly with children and orphans around the world, there are things you can do as individuals to help with this problem. You can donate money or supplies to orphanages, or donate to organizations that provide awareness about things such as HIV and AIDS and violence. You can sponsor a child, providing them with food and funding their schooling. You could even adopt a child if you felt led in that direction. And lastly, I would encourage everyone to go on a mission trip, even if it's just a short-term one, and get to experience the similar things that I got to experience. Now, going back to my time with that little boy, there was really nothing that I could do for him except to show him love and care, something that many orphans may have never even felt before. Lacking everything else, that's all they wanted, to be loved. And if we continue to take action on this, less children will be abandoned to the streets and in orphanages. I want to encourage you to take action to help a child and to impact a life forever.